Hello everyone, I'm Jyotika. I welcome you to my channel Excelling Psychology. This is part 1 of the lesson I am posting for the topic of qualitative research methods for the IBDP psychology program. You will find this topic on pages 25 and 26 of the latest IB guide for psychology. By the latest guide, I mean the one which is intended for the first examination to be held in 2019. An understanding of this lesson should be helpful to both SL and HL students for answering their LAQs or ERQs, the questions that demand critical thinking, and furthermore to HL students for answering paper 3, in which they are asked questions regarding research methods directly. In this part, I will discuss with you what qualitative research is. I will not get into any specific methods right away. Those I will discuss in the upcoming parts of the lesson. As you can see now, in the second part, I will be discussing the case study method. The naturalistic observation method I will cover in part 3 and interviews in the last part of this lesson. For this part, I intend to discuss what the meaning of qualitative research is, what its characteristics are, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of qualitative research, that is, I intend to evaluate it. What this understanding will help you do is, it will help you evaluate the research you use as evidence for your LAQs or ERQs, basically the 22 marks questions. If you use qualitative research as evidence for any of these answers, you can use the points in this lesson to find its strengths and weaknesses. As you will see on page 41 of the guide, evaluation is very important to score well on the long answers. It will also help you answer paper 3 if you are an HL student, in the sense that you will develop a foundation for the specific qualitative research methods like case study, interviews, etc. Those will become easier for you to understand once you have understood this lesson well. It can help you answer paper 3 questions directly. For example, if you are asked how a quantitative method could have been employed in contrast to a qualitative method, then you will be able to answer that question only if you know how, in essence, qualitative methods are compared to quantitative methods. I want to reiterate here that I am following the guide here and I am strictly discussing the topic qualitative research as it is presented on page 26 of the guide. Ethical considerations, sampling, issues, etc. I will discuss in future lessons, not in this one. For the written lesson of this video, that is a transcript of this video with all the content on the slides of this presentation as well as the text of what I am narrating right now, you can visit my blog excellingpsychology.blogspot.com. The link is available in the description box below. There are many other lessons on psychology as well as specifically on IB psychology, such as lessons in which I have discussed the latest 2019 IBDP psychology syllabus, how to answer 9-mark questions and how to answer 22-mark questions. Do go through all of those lessons as well. Let's begin the part 1 of this video lesson now. What is meant by research in psychology? Research is nothing but the investigation of a question of interest to the psychologist. Psychologists do not answer questions based on what they think or feel. They answer questions scientifically through their use of the empirical method. Simply put, they answer questions based on what they or others observe or experience, not based on anyone's opinions. This means of answering questions through careful, systematic study of observations and experiences is called research in psychology. For example, if a psychologist wants to answer the question, what makes some children restless in the classroom today? She may personally feel that early exposure to technology is making them restless, but this will not be her answer to the question. How then will she go about answering the question? There are many ways she can choose. She can sit in an actual classroom and note down what situations are making the child restless. She can interview some parents and ask them what they observe about their children's restlessness. She can take up the case of one child and study it in detail, staying in the child's home and accompanying her to school for a few days to notice what makes her restless. No matter which method she decides to adopt, she will be either using her observations or someone else's observations and experiences to make conclusions and answer her questions. In sum, we can say that she will be carrying out research.
I just mentioned how there are many different ways through which a psychologist can answer any research questions. There are indeed many ways. To study these variety of methods easily, they are classified into two broad categories, one of which is quantitative research, and the other of which is qualitative research. Today we look at what this category of qualitative research is. Qualitative, the word as we know, is derived from the word quality. When we refer to the quality of an object, what are we referring to? When we refer to quality, we refer to the defining attribute of an object. If we were to discuss our liking for a dish, we would discuss how we found it in terms of quality, how delicious we found it. This is because the defining attribute of food is its taste.
You must have noticed two things immediately here. One, that judgments of quality differ from person to person. What you might have found to be an excellent movie, your friend might have found to be mediocre. Two, quality is not countable. I can express the degree to which I find a dish to be tasty, quite delicious, really delicious, more delicious than average, etc. But if I say I found it to be one delicious, three delicious, etc., that would not make sense. Keep these points in mind, for we will get back to them soon. These are very important characteristics of qualitative research. Now, how do we apply this understanding of quality to research? Research, as we have seen, is the investigation carried out to answer a question. When we answer this question by investigating the quality of a phenomenon, then we are carrying out qualitative research. Let's return to our example of investigating the cause of children's restlessness that we saw earlier. If the researcher were to ask parents what they had observed about the restlessness of their children, then her research would be qualitative because she would be looking into the reasons for the phenomenon of restlessness. Reasons or explanations by nature are qualitative because they seek to define the attributes of a phenomenon. What defines children's restlessness? What is the nature of children's restlessness? In simple words, why are children restless? Just like we would like to know what makes some food delicious. Why is the food delicious? This is the key point of qualitative research. It is explanatory in nature. It seeks the reason behind phenomena or simply seeks to answer why things occur the way they do. Simply put, qualitative research looks into the quality or defining features of phenomena. I'll show you a section of a hypothetical qualitative research paper now. Please take a careful look at it. It's on the screen. What I want you to see here is how we can determine what the research question investigated was. It is found in the aim section of the paper. It might not always be explicitly given a subtitle aim, but it is found in the section which discusses the aim. When you study any research paper to prepare it for the exam, how will you be able to identify whether it was qualitative or quantitative? As you have seen from what I have highlighted, what I have underlined, it's obvious that this paper is a case study, so it has to do with qualitative research. What does a case study do? Though we have not discussed it in depth yet, a case study takes a single case and studies it in detail, as you can read in the aim section. We just saw that whatever is studied in detail in terms of explanation qualifies as qualitative research. Now that we know what qualitative research is, let us understand some aspects of it which make it easy to identify. That is, when you're reading a paper, it is these very characteristics that will tell you that the paper you are reading is a qualitative research paper. The first aspect we need to know is that qualitative research describes and explains. We see a lot of verbal content in qualitative research. If you have a qualitative research paper in front of you, you are likely to come across someone's narration of his experience or the researcher's description of what he observed, etc. I'll show you such a hypothetical section of a paper on the screen now. Just take a minute to read what is written. What I want you to see is the amount of description given by the researcher. It is very detailed. The next characteristic of qualitative research is that it is subjective. I'll just take a moment to tell you here that if you're finding that the pace of the video is fast, you need to stop and look at something for a little more time. Do make use of the pause button. Okay, so coming back to the lesson, the qualitative research second characteristic is it is subjective. Interpretations are innate in qualitative research. For example, if a researcher is to describe what he sees a student doing in class, he might write, "The student was fidgeting a lot, indicating he was bored." While the researcher does have reasons to believe that the student was bored, as he says the student was fidgeting. Another expert might have felt that the fidgeting was an indication of physical discomfort in the situation. In many textbooks, you will read that the researcher is taken to be a part of the research process in case of qualitative research. This is what it means, that the researcher's judgments and expertise will influence the way he looks at the phenomenon in front of him. Very often in such research, we also see that the researcher builds a rapport with the people who are a part of the research. For example, the researcher who is following a child's behavior in the classroom will take the child's parents into confidence, show them the necessity of research, and assure them of their child's protection from any emotional or physical harm. This makes the researcher very vital to the research. He must know how to conduct himself correctly. Besides, he can also impact the research in a way by either putting people at ease or making them unsure of what is happening. Basically, the researcher is indispensable and irreplaceable in qualitative research. I want you to go through a hypothetical research section on the screen now, which will show you how professional rapport is established. Take a minute to read what is written. Though you need not know rapport building in detail, I just want you to see how the researcher gets personally involved in the qualitative research process. We've already seen this in previous hypothetical sections that I showed you, how well the researcher was describing every event taking place in front of him or her. Here I want you to see how the researcher interacts with the participants and their parents. Do make use of the pause button if you need some more time to see what is on the screen. I'll move ahead now. Okay, the third characteristic of qualitative research is that it is detailed. It looks at a single phenomenon in depth. So if a researcher is noting a child's behavior in the classroom, she will try to find out as much as is possible about the child's responses to all types of situations in the classroom, dedicating a lot of time and effort to the process. So very often we find that qualitative research looks at very few participants or a very limited research question, but in great depth. As you can see on your screen now, a part of a section of a hypothetical research paper is what I've presented. Here I wanted to see the detailing in terms of describing the behaviors of the child, as well as in terms of noting the child's response to different seemingly small events in the classroom. Such details are typical of qualitative research. Having understood now what qualitative research is, it is the type of research that looks in depth into a research question and makes the researcher a very important part of the research process by giving due consideration to his interpretations and by his forming a relationship with the participants of the research as is needed by the question of interest. Having this understanding now, we are going to evaluate qualitative research. We are going to look into its merits and demerits. What we will then have is a basic framework on which we can evaluate our research studies for our essay questions and for any unseen research that comes up in paper 3. We will know what to basically look out for in these papers. Also, when you come to a discussion of specific methods such as case studies, interviews, etc., you will be able to easily identify these strengths and weaknesses. You won't have to remember the evaluation for each method separately. If you understand it now, you will be able to naturally see these strengths and weaknesses in those methods. Coming to the first strength, the expertise of the researcher is a vital part of the research process. Psychologists who carry out research work generally have a host of education and work experience with them, which enables them to look out for those aspects in the phenomenon that help further an understanding of it in the right direction. Unlike novices who would not be able to distinguish between which information is needed and which is not, who would not be able to plan out the research carefully. Besides, expert psychologists can also respond to any sudden needs that arise in the research situation, which someone who is simply assisting a researcher cannot do. Finally, by interpreting data, an expert psychologist can really connect findings to the research question, seeing what data answers which aspect of a research question. Since lay people who are being studied in the research will not speak in psychological terms, they will not behave in ways which can be easily categorized as belonging to the psychological process or that. Moreover, every individual behaves differently. Only a researcher with good experience in his area can make sense out of these different behaviors valuably. Computers and statistical software can only interpret data as per the program fed inside them, not as per insights that come from expertise. Okay, so if a child is behaving restlessly, how will the researcher know what kind of behaviors count for restlessness, which do not? Only because he has the expertise, he knows his theories well, he has experience of working with children who are restless. So his experience will give a very good direction to the research process. The next trend we need to discuss is that details of a single phenomenon are explored in qualitative research. As we saw previously, qualitative research has depth. As you might know, a critical goal of psychology is to solve any issues that arise from mental processes. Say a researcher wants to know how children can improve their memory. Suppose this researcher finds out that learning material over and over again improves memory for material. First of all, how will she able to see this relationship? Because she must have looked in depth into different types of ways in which people learn. Now, how will she be able to develop a technique of repeated learning? That is, how will she prepare a plan of exactly how many times students should go over a particular method, how much students should space the repetition, etc. Again, qualitative research would be the best option since students would be able to report how comfortable they are with using this technique, which parts of the technique are proving to be challenging, etc. In sum, what we want to understand are the details of a phenomenon and not just know what are its causes, effects, etc. Qualitative research is indispensable in this case when we want to understand, not only know. Another strength of qualitative research is that it explores rare phenomena. Some phenomena relating to mental processes are nearly unique or fully unique. For example, any case of brain damage tends to be unique because the brain structure of different people, if seen minutely, is different. Besides, the exact location and extent of damage varies from person to person. So, for phenomena like these, single or very few cases have to be studied in depth. It is not possible to study large number of cases since there are not so many. However, such cases do hold potential to influence a large number of people. Say, for example, that the person has had damage in a specific region of the brain. Now, very few people are likely to undergo the same damage. However, say that because of this damage, the person is not able to use his hands correctly. So, we come to know that this area of the brain is very important to being able to use one's hands correctly. And since we all use our hands on a daily basis, we all can benefit from this finding. Say we can find some method to stimulate this area and make our hands more productive. Say we can find some way to protect this area from damage. So we cannot overlook such rare cases. Qualitative research makes it possible to further all psychological goals, including description, explanation, prediction, and application, because it looks into details of rare phenomena. A final strength of qualitative research we need to know is that it reflects real-world phenomena. Qualitative research is realistic since it occurs in natural settings. When we observe something or ask people to describe their experiences, we see or discuss what has actually occurred with them, not something that has been deliberately stimulated. This gives us confidence that what we are studying is true to life and will be useful for everyday living. You might have heard of a term ecological validity. Ecological, as you know, refers to people's surroundings. Validity refers to truthfulness. Since qualitative research is true to people's surroundings as they are normally, it holds high ecological validity, which is one of the characteristics of good quality research. Okay, so if I'm studying a child's restlessness in the classroom, I am studying him in the classroom as he does his restless behaviors every day. Okay, so I'm being very true to the real life setting of the child. I'm studying restlessness as it occurs in the real world. These points you might be able to understand better when we contrast them with how quantitative research takes place in upcoming lessons. Okay, coming now to the weaknesses of qualitative research. We'll take a look now at what possible disadvantages we can face in using a qualitative research method. First is the subjectivity in the research reduces its internal validity. As we've seen quite a few times above, the researchers' interpretations are a vital part of qualitative research. Since these interpretations are inseparable from the findings of the study, its validity reduces. I'll give you a simple example here. Say a researcher attempts to be very objective in her findings. So she literally counts a child's behaviors and describes them as she sees them to describe his restlessness. She counts and notes exactly how many times he looked away from the teacher during the lecture. But how do we know whether she counted correctly? She's human. There could have been an error in her observation or her keeping track or her recording. See, these issues seem minute, but the issue of internal validity is like that. It requires as much precision as possible. In qualitative research, precision is always questionable. So when it comes to internal validity, which refers to how accurately our findings are describing the phenomenon, qualitative research will always score low. Was the child really as restless as the researcher has reported, or is it that the researcher's observations are more influential on the findings than what was really happening? This is difficult to answer. The subjectivity in the research also reduces its reliability and thereby its replicability. Since the researcher's interpretations are so vital to the research, the reliability of the study is reduced. What is reliability? It refers to how consistent the findings of research are, in the sense that if another researcher was to investigate the same phenomenon, would he obtain the same findings? Think using your common sense here. If one researcher says that all causes of restlessness are the time of the day, duration of class periods, and exposure of students to technology, we would believe her because she has used her expertise to come to these conclusions. Now assume two or three researchers said that even they have found the exact same causes of restlessness through their independent investigations. Wouldn't you become more confident in these causes? In research terms, we would say that we would consider the results to be reliable. Very closely related to the issue of reliability is the issue of replicability. So I have included both of them in the same point. When one researcher presents his findings regarding a phenomenon, we, in accordance with the scientific method, like to reproduce the results. That is, conduct similar research addressing the same question so that we can confirm the findings through our repeated investigations. Such repetition of studies is called replication. As you must be able to understand now, if we find results similar to an original research when we replicate it, we will be able to establish a high reliability of the findings. Now, in order to be replicable or simply put, repeated in the same way, a study has to be very well defined, very precise, right from its procedure to its findings. In the case of qualitative research, we may be able to define the procedure or the way we are conducting the research very specifically. Okay, so we can say interview 10 people with exactly these 20 questions. But what about findings? Will my 20 participants say exactly the same thing that the 20 participants of the original research said? Will how I interpret what they see be exactly the same that the original researcher would have interpreted it? Then, can I compare what I find to what the original researcher found? Is it even possible? Qualitative research is not replicable, which decreases its reliability. Coming to a final weakness now, the restricted sample and narrow setting reduce the generalizability of qualitative research. Qualitative research generally makes use of a very small sample, that is, people on whom a study is conducted, for two reasons, which you will understand better as you study further lessons. First, it is often found that qualitative research is used to study rare phenomena, as we've discussed. There are not enough cases of rare phenomena, so there is no question of having a large sample in this case. Besides, since qualitative researchers have to deal with detailed data, such as a large amount of written data that they themselves have observed and noted, as we've seen in the examples throughout, or a large amount of verbal information that has been spoken by someone else, they cannot manage to conduct such research with too many people. You can imagine the time and effort it would take to analyze that much data from that many people. Now, because such few people are involved in the research, what is affected is the generalizability of what is found. By generalizability, we mean to how many people can we apply the findings of a study. If I tell you that all the 10 people of Mumbai who I asked whether they like a particular chocolate, how likely do you think that most people in Mumbai like the chocolate? Now, if I tell you 1 lakh people in Mumbai like the chocolate, now what would you think? Would most people in Mumbai be liking the chocolate? Now, if I tell you that 10 lakh people in Mumbai like the chocolate, see what happens is that the more people that we include in our study, the more we can apply its findings to an even greater number of people. This is a problem with qualitative research since we conduct it on a very countable number of people. Well, that's a short and sweet lesson, and that's the end of the lesson. Coming to the question of how this lesson will help you to answer the paper, as I discussed in the beginning, this lesson gives you a framework for understanding specific qualitative research methods, that is, the case study, interview, and naturalistic observation. Now, when you go to study these methods in detail, you will see a lot of what we have studied here being reflected in those methods. Since we've discussed the lesson, I'll explain how you can use it to prepare for the examination more clearly now. Take a look at the following possible questions from paper 3 of the HL examination on the screen. It is questions like these that we are preparing for in these lessons. For the first question, for instance, once you know that research is qualitative, you know how the sample size and nature of the phenomenon reduces its generalizability. For the second question, you know how the reliability and validity of research are reduced when it is qualitative, which will reduce its credibility. For the third question, you know that there is heavy bias in qualitative research, that we just saw researcher bias, the problem of too much interpretation on part of the researcher. So if we are looking for low bias in research, qualitative research would not be desirable. We will see in further lessons how these issues play a part in specific qualitative research methods and what can be done to eliminate them. For both SL and HL students, as I mentioned previously, when it comes to the 22-mark answer in which you have to support your answer by at least 2 studies, you will be able to comment on the authenticity of the study by using what you learn in these lessons as framework. Now what must come to your mind is, how should I practice this lesson? There is nothing to memorize in this lesson, only to comprehend. So I recommend that after watching this video once carefully, head over to my blog that I mentioned earlier and study the lesson by yourself, making your notes as you desire. The link is in the description box. Write down words like reliability, generalizability, etc. in your notebook and see if you can explain what these mean independently without having to refer to the lesson. See if you can explain how these are related to qualitative research. Then you can answer a quiz that I've prepared on this lesson, the link for which I am attaching in the description box below. See how you fare on the quiz and revise the lesson accordingly. Until you practice writing independently and answer the quiz, you will feel like you have understood the lesson, but won't gain any confidence in the same. Okay, that's the end of part 1 of the lesson. In part 2, we'll look at the case study method of qualitative research. Thank you so much for taking your time to watch this video. Do visit my blog for this lesson and many other lessons relating to psychology. The link is in the description box. If you want to know more about me, the information is there on my blog. Besides, if you have any questions about this lesson, you can ask me right here or in the comment section on my blog. If you have any questions relating to psychology, you want explanation of some concepts or have some career related questions or need some help on personal issues, you can contact me on Quora. I keep answering such questions there. Again, I'm posting the link in the description box below. Do not forget to like this video, press the share button if it has been helpful, share it with your friends looking for help in their preparation just like you, and subscribe to my channel for more such lessons in the future. Till we meet again, see you soon, bye bye.